Hey everybody, Jason Burmis here, and we got kind of a impromptu, over-the-top, back-and-forth show in the no free speech zone in 2021. Joined with me, kind of on the fly, is the legend, Pat Miletich. Now, Pat and I were just at a really interesting meeting where we were going over, Pat, just I guess, not only a plethora of ideas, but actions to kind of stand up to the tyranny that we're facing in 2021. And some of that tyranny includes a multitude of your Facebook posts being taken down and the fact you can't even post over there.
I can't do live videos on Facebook, Instagram, Periscope, none of it. So I just started a new Twitter page where it's just not my full name or anything, and I'll be able to eventually. They're ending Periscope,
Okay.
and then you'll be able to do Twitter lives.
Okay, so Periscope is that? See, I didn't know that. I often triple stream. So
in
now,
March, I believe, March of 2021, they're gone.
Now, are they gonna monetize that too? Because I know Periscope is sort of monetized. Most people aren't. Instagram's where the big influencers are, right?
Yeah.
Like, a lot of people are making money there. Twitter obviously has been in bed with Periscope. I didn't know that they were ending Periscope Live, but it's all the same thing, right? I mean, if you're banned across the board, that means, I don't know, big tech collusion, Pat?
Just a tad, but I'm thinking by not having, I had to start a new email account, all that sort of stuff, to even be able to get onto Twitter again, right? To get around all of it, and then just not use my name. And
this is Twitter third time round.
Yes. I got locked out of the first one. Second one I just deleted because it was after the Washington, D.C. debacle, and that idiot wrote that article slandering me with all the untruths. I just went, you know what? I'll just end this one and start over.
Well, the funny thing about that hand signal that everybody wants to say is, oh, this is white supremacy, and it's the old AOK symbol, or some people are like, oh, it's Illuminati, or it's 666, all that stuff. Andrew Cuomo used it during his
Obama's used it. Everybody's used it.
Davos, they had one of these Davos dailies. I've been doing these plays on this, and the African American woman that's preaching globalism, she does it for a good minute and a half. I doubt she's a white supremacist, but at the same time, again, when they want to utilize their false narratives to attack people, they weaponize it. Just like they did in your case.
Sure, yeah. No, and that's what it was. I took pictures with people all over D.C. that day. You were there. People go, oh, hey, Pat Miletich. Hey, man, can I get a picture with you? Whatever. So I do that. Take pictures with people. I posted some of them. And a guy that I actually, considered a friend, was the one that wrote the article saying, literally, the headline, Pat Miletich supports domestic terrorism and white supremacy. That was the headline. And I'm thinking, man, how bad do you have to feel about yourself, or how much are you being paid by someone to do something that retarded? Literally.
But then again, when I watched, and we actually talked, I think, the day after the inauguration, and I watched this stuff. But just to have somebody sit up there and start talking about in 2021 in America, the scourge of white supremacy and domestic extremism, as that's how our nation really is or needs to be portrayed, is super alarming, right?
It's super alarming in the fact that the citizens actually believe the line of bullshit out of the media and the politicians, right? Because we know the narrative is being handed down from above them, the controllers, the people who attend Bilderberg meetings, right? So that's where the narrative is being handed down. Hate them because they're a different color. Hate them because they're a different religion. Hate them because they don't wear a mask. Hate them for whatever fucking reason they can make up. The people believe it. And that's the most alarming thing that comes out of all of this is people have to understand the dynamic of, how did the people in Nazi Germany turn on a certain group of people, i.e. the Jewish people, and literally ignore or assist in loading those people on boxcars. That's what we're facing right now, is people are so rabid and so angry in places at people who don't wear a mask that they will literally, eventually, if the media were to come out and say, because they've already been pushing it. The second wave, the new strain of the coronavirus, which make sure we get into the coronavirus, because I told you about my scientist friend.
Yeah, I don't know if we can even say that on this thing.
Immunology experts, virology experts, all on one team. So we'll talk about that. But we're looking at a dynamic of when the media comes out and says the new strain has come out. It's far more deadly. We almost locked down again. We almost put masks, triple masks, butt swabs, everything else.
They're doing wastewater testing. That's not fictitious.
It'll come out positive for coronavirus.
Well, that's
it will.
So, in New York, where I left,
now we can't drink water anymore, tap water, of course, because coronavirus will be in it.
Well, I wish you were wrong, but if you actually saw what the World Health Organization said when they discounted the fact it came from a laboratory, right? So now, basically, the WHO is parroting what China said, and then they said the new investigation, Pat, it's not going to be it came from a bat, it's not going to be it came from a pangolin. Instead, the new the crack team is now going to look at imported frozen meat as the case for COVID-19. But if you or I think that maybe it's some kind of biological agent, or even let's say, because I know that you were bringing this up, whether it exists at all, that is no longer allowed on Facebook at all. You're no longer allowed to go with that narrative. So now we have to have a virus that's natural, even though they told us it was from a bat, bullshit. They told us it was from a pangolin, absolute bullshit.
Right.
We still can't really pinpoint whether or not the source is Wuhan. Now that they're testing people in the United States, they're saying, well, oh wow, this person was positive back in the beginning of December. That means they had to be exposed to it in November of 2019. So there's all these contradictory narratives, but we're really not allowed to talk to them unless someone like Time Magazine writes about it, right?
No shit, yeah. The Time Magazine article coming out admitting that they rigged the fucking election. Dude.
Well, hey, listen. When secret cabals exist, they don't rig things, Pat. They fortify them. Oh. And when they do this, they change laws and they control the flow of information,
right,
so that the proper outcome of the election can be. I mean, the wording that they used. I mean, talk about. A lot of people were like, "Oh, don't piss on me and tell me it's raining." I'm like, this is next level. This is somebody literally sitting on top of you with their nutsack on your nose, pissing on you, smiling, and telling you there's a thunderstorm about.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
it's next level stuff. So when we have that, right, because that was one of the big, hurdles we were talking about, I go, we're in bizarro world. When we were all talking about it, and really what it came down to, and we talked to people from Illinois and from Iowa, was to localize this thing, right?
Yeah, and that's the thing is, we have to be able to talk to our local sheriffs, local politicians, school boards, all these types of people, put pressure on them, let them know that they're going to get voted out of office if they don't vote for freedom, right? If they do not assist in, following through with their constitutional, their oath to the Constitution of actually providing people with the ability to have freedom. The founding documents, as we were talking about tonight, were written to restrain government, not us. Mm-hmm. But that's been turned upside down and shit all over.
100%. And, we were talking about it today, the possibilities of a quote-unquote constitutional convention, when the truth of the matter is a constitutional convention could be the very, very end of anything that's left of our Constitution and Bill of Rights that's already been severely eviscerated.
Yeah,
right?
because the Constitution or the Convention of the States, in regards to that, was thought of. Conservatives need to gather to change things. The only problem with that is there's so many liberals that would show up, because they will, and the Constitution will get completely shredded.
Well, I don't even know if we can call them liberals. Let's say they take the guise of the left, right? They take to the Democratic Party. What they're really voting on are authoritarian measures disguised in socialism. But what's it really going to do? Ramp up more government control.
Yeah.
And they've already created this quasi brown shirt force.
Sure.
With contact tracing. We've already seen the legislation, especially in states like New York, that you could say are blue states,
right.
But that's only because that's what the ruling class there represents. I mean, like we were talking to people in Illinois, just like they feel like they're beholden to crooked Chicago politics, there are so many people in New York that feel like they're beholden to this crooked, gangster-like New York politics. So
gangster-like?
I mean, they are gang. That's why he's Andrew Capo
straight up
Cuomo.
gangsters.
The real gangsters.
So, I mean, think about J.B. Pritzker in Illinois. Straight up gangster. Straight up. Oh, hey, welcome to my 300-acre, $15 million horse farm. You don't serve the people, dude. Come on.
Well, John Kerry riding around in his 2 private jets. He's got like 5 properties.
Painted like ketchup jars.
Yeah. For those that don't know, he actually married into the Heinz fortune and then divorced her.
Yeah.
Yeah, divorced her. So I think he got half. I think that's
look, I think he's smart in that aspect. Brilliant guy. Because if I had the chance, I could stomach for several years being married to a billionaire liberal just long enough to just figure out a way to get a divorce and get half that money.
You hear that? Billionaire heiresses to mayonnaise or something?
You know, because look, all those liberal guys you've been having sex with, they don't compare.
No, they don't. Yeah, you're just going to get right in there.
I've got wrestler's hips. I mean, come on.
You heard it here first, folks.
They'll pay $500 million for that shit.
Oh my God! Let's say they're worth half, even $2 billion. You easily, even after taxes, you probably get half.
I think it's a good plan.
Yeah,
it's a great
plan. You don't want to sign the prenup though. In theory, in theory. But again, you talk about that though. That's a good point though, because Kerry was kind of like, don't get me wrong. He had that blue blood aspect. He was, I think, second cousins with Bush on one side and then eighth on the other. Rhodes Scholar, obviously went to Yale.
Looks like a former college quarterback type guy, right?
Yeah. But they stuck him, even with all that. He was kind of like almost the Pete bootlicker of his day, Buttigieg.
Sure.
Because they put him in Vietnam. And he was actually one of the people that came to notoriety speaking out against that war after the fact, which launched his political career.
Right.
Can you imagine that, guys? John Kerry, anti-war, because he's done so much since his 2004 run to stop the war on terror, and he's doing so much in there now.
Yeah, how much, you think about the Kerrys, the McCains, the Grahams, all the guys, right and left, that were part of, all of these wars in the Middle East, right? All of them.
All of them.
Every bit of it.
Every little bit. And look, if you thought that Kerry was a legitimate candidate, he bowed down bigger than Bernie did in 2016, where they started recounting votes in that election, and they were like, we're finding votes for Kerry, and he conceded.
Right.
And, some people did want him because they thought he was a legitimate candidate at the time to challenge Bush, but just like you pointed out, what he really was a social climber and a tool of the globalists. And look where he is right now. He's basically an envoy. In fact, you're going to hear more, and we already have heard more live from John Kerry at speeches and presentations than you will of Joe Biden.
Right.
100%.
Yeah.
I mean, he's given presentations 30, 40, 50 minutes long. If you got Joe Biden for 5 minutes on camera and he's speaking for 3 minutes, look out.
A train wreck.
A train wreck. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, he's an absolute dumpster fire. So, Kerry's still lucid, can still speak, even though he lies the entire time.
He's good at it. He's good at lying, man.
That's something that we talked about, having our own server, right? So we can't get taken down off the web, because that's going to be a very important tool in the truth. We talked about our neighbors who might not even remotely understand what the truth is. And we need to have those tools to get the word out to those people. Look, I could walk around this town every day for a year, knocking on every door, right? It would probably help, but wouldn't it serve a lot bigger purpose to plant the seeds on the internet with people all over, not just the United States, but the world, in terms of what the truth is, what's really going on, right? What the real agenda is of the elites for us. And that doesn't include us breathing anymore.
It's funny that I laugh about that. But you saw, I'll say this. So I watched the Super Bowl this year. Sometimes I don't. Sometimes I'll do a watch along with the commercials or whatever, but always do the wrap up. I actually did a halftime show watch along filled with occult transhumanist imagery.
Bizarre.
Very bizarre. And I always predict these things because it's like it happens 90% of the time. Every once in a while you get a surprise. What did surprise me, however, is that the vast majority of the commercials I had thought were going to be big on the mask thing, and they weren't.
Right.
It was only NFL. NFL was big on the BLM, the social justice, and the wearing a mask. And, even when Biden tried to lead it, of course, he got booed and the media covered it up.
Right.
But what was a push was Space Force and a human space, a civilian Space Force. So now Elon Musk is going to put you and me, there's a website, it's called Inspiration 4, and they're reaching out to the audience, you're going to the moon, and then the next thing was this transhumanism thing. So the big fantasy of this woman was that her Amazon Echo, I think it was, it's new, it's sleek, it looks great. They're like, how could it look better? Well, it's Michael B. Jordan, the movie star. So it's like basically a 60-second love fest with her and her Echo where Michael B. Jordan's eyes turn blue. So he's the robot she loves. And I'm thinking, wow, this is really creepy. And people wanted me to talk about it before. And then the halftime show opens up with a choir and a descendant-looking angel with red eyes. And you're thinking, well, is this demonic? Obviously, it represents that. But then you got to look at everybody's face, and they're not demonized. They're gear on their heads because they're transhuman robot cyborgs.
Well, and then it might have been you that even sent it to me in slow motion. Somebody sent to me. The stage flashed underneath the stage.
I saw that, the Satan thing, right?
And it said Satan, clearly.
Well, I've got to see if that's the same performance, because I was looking at that and I'm like, is that the same? Because, don't get me wrong, I'm sure that...
It looked like the same stage.
I got to look at it, because someone sent me that still image. Whether or not Satan flashed, he's dressed in what? Red. I mean, he obviously represented Lucifer.
Yeah.
He was the one, in fact, to bring in another one as the light bearer, he was the only one in that red jacket with all of his demon followers where that sparkled. And then his last song was about the light.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And everybody knows, listen, again, you start looking into this stuff, especially when you get to Luciferianism, whether it's Satanism, etc. That being is supposed to be the being of light, the one that gave us our intellect, right? The ones that want to promote it on that end, that he's the good guy,
right? Is
that he's the light bearer. He's really the reason we're free.
The name Lucifer is light, right?
Yeah. And the thing is, at the same time, it's really inverted and it's actually oppressing us, and we're becoming slave-like robots.
Sure.
And they put it right in our face. And I people listen to me and watch this, and they're like, "Oh, Jason, you're going too far." And I'm like, "Am I?" Am I really? I mean, you got Elon Musk out there, and he's being like, he's the next hero, right? He's probably the next light bringer.
He's the bringer of friggin' true slavery with the surveillance with Skynet, Skylink.
Oh, man. And that's actually, so that's commercially available now. Starlink, just so everybody knows.
5G, right?
So, all right, so there's different levels of it. So Starlink satellites, although it did go up with the DARPA twin for the military. Okay, that's not named Starlink, but it's also unnamed. They just admitted that they were putting them up at the same time. So Starlink...
Nothing wrong with DARPA, though, right?
Oh, no, the Defense Advanced Research Program? No, they've never done anything weird. So anyway, but again...
I want you to get back to Satan eventually, though. So
all right.
Because I have some points to make.
All right, so... man, I was trying to...
DARPA,
we were at
satellites.
The satellites. Okay, so we were...
Elon Musk.
Elon Musk, yes. So he's putting all these in there, but then with Starlink, there's Neuralink, right? And that's the brain chip, and that's the robot. Like a robot.
That's your connectivity to, like, all knowledge in the computers around the world, but that's what they load into it.
Thank you.
So your knowledge base will be what they want you to have.
And
no opposing view.
Even more than that. So let's take it a step further. So yeah, there's a knowledge base there, and maybe you can't go out of the narrative there, but it's also going to be able to send electrical impulses. They talk about drug addiction, they talk about depression. Well, all of a sudden, maybe you think pasta's the worst thing ever. You hate pasta. You can't get it away from me. I don't want it. You know, I'm a keto guy. I'm trying to stay in shape. I mean, they're going to make it so you see pasta on television or somewhere else, and you encounter it. Oh, man. I want that. And you're going to have a dopamine hit. And then when I eat, oh man, dopamine. So they could literally get you emotional about things that you disliked before or had a negative view of before just by messing with your levels. I mean, the whole thing is extremely scary.
And you dumbed it down, and now it's on a higher level. Yes, we have to get rid of all vehicles that burn gasoline and diesel. That's got to go away. All airplanes must go, except, of course, for the elites, Learjets.
Yeah.
You know, those have to stay because, of course, they need to travel. No, and we're going to get... It makes perfect sense for the Earth to survive. We all must pack into these megacities and just learn to coexist, right?
Not own anything. Just not own anything.
And be happy.
And be happy. And you think that this... I love to play it here. I can't play it here because they've taken it down again and again. But there is... So pre-Matrix, right? Because that's what everybody goes to.
Okay.
Pre-Matrix. There is this, and I'd love for you to watch it because I know you're a Mason and you've seen a bunch of the symbolism and I'm sure you've read all the conspiracy theories.
You just told everyone that I'm Illuminati.
Listen, people contact me all the time. They're like, I can't believe you talked to that militant bastard. And I'm like, dude, guys,
Did you ever see the episode with Eddie Bravo that I was on?
No, I haven't
So I'm
seen it.
Sam Tripoli. God, who else? But Eddie Bravo was there, and we're talking, and he's going on and on about Freemasonry, Illuminati, this and that. And I go, Eddie, I'm a Freemason. He goes, you're fucking kidding me. You're fucking kidding. I'm
Did you have the tattoo at the time?
I don't know. I don't remember. But it was the look on his face. Well, of course, he was super high.
Uh-huh.
But so he was super high and realizing that I'm a Freemason.
Uh-huh.
But so that brings me to Freemasonry and the church. So for people to understand this.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so yes, I'm a Freemason. Former master of my lodge. Okay, I did the degree work, learned, memorized, all that sort of stuff. How to open and close a lodge, all that sort of stuff. Mm-hmm. There was a video circling around on Facebook Messenger where it was a Catholic priest in Italy. Maybe you saw it, where he's filming himself. And he's walking along through the streets of Rome, and he's got his monk outfit on, of course. Okay. And he goes, okay, I'm going to break down for you what's going on in the world today. And he goes through and he goes, the Illuminati, the Freemasons are in the process of attempting to take over the world, and goes through all this bullshit, and they're satanic, and they're this, and they're that. And I go, okay, hold on a second. Where is satanic pedophilia and pedophiles? Where are they housed in the biggest numbers in the world? What organization?
Catholic Church.
Catholic Church. Just a fucking guess. On top of that, go back historically. Freemasons, French Revolution. They started it because the oppression of the church and the crown on the citizens. The citizens were being ground into the fucking roads, the concrete. And the Freemasons there started it, which ended in some beheadings and a little bit of violence.
And they were so powerful that they even spawned a political group, the Anti-Masons, that were a political party.
Right.
Yeah.
So then you fast forward to the American Revolution. Mm-hmm. Freemasons had a huge part in that. If you look at the way our founding documents are written, the way the oath to become a citizen is written, all that stuff is, trust me, it's Masonic language, right? Mm-hmm. When you do the oath and everything. Take the obligation, so to speak. So, at the Alamo, Travis, Daniel Boone, Davy Crockett, a lot of other Masons knew they were going to die. They stood there on principle. They knew they were going to die. Santa Anna was a Freemason. After those guys got killed and they were carrying the bodies, there's a speech by Santa Anna talking to the people carrying the bodies. Those are brothers. Treat those bodies with respect, that sort of stuff. So there's a lot of respect between Blue Lodge Masons, we'll say. Okay, there are clandestine lodges of Masons. Those people aren't recognized by true Masons, but they do some real suspicious shit. Let's put it that way, right? Mm-hmm. I don't even think, to be a true Mason, you can't have a felony, and you at least have to believe in a higher power.
Yep.
Okay? Those are the two rules that you got to have, or that are in place. For those guys, I think felonies, whatever, they don't give a shit. So, but the point is and then you go even further forward in history, and the Pope, the leader of the friggin' Catholic Church, and this isn't going against people who are of the Catholic faith. I grew up, as a Catholic. But the leader
and you're pretty religious to this day. I mean,
I'm spiritual. I'm more spiritual. Yeah. But the leader of the Catholic Church, the Pope, makes a statement and says, it's okay to have aborted fetal cells in the COVID vaccine. And I go, if you can at least step back objectively and listen to what I just said about the Catholic Church and Freemasons, you should be able to figure out who the fucking satanic ones are and who aren't, right? The people who stood up for citizens' freedoms, that removed the notion that people were ordained by God to rule over the rest of the people, and those were the ones that were allowed to have castles and wear crowns and all the other bullshit. They duped the citizens into believing that whole notion. Now fast forward even more to modern day CEOs of big tech, big pharma, who basically with their money are controlling our politicians and everything that goes on, all the policies, the attempt at enslaving mankind right now, all of that stuff. So now you've got the crown, the CEOs of big tech and big pharma, and then you've got the politicians also, right? And the church oppressing the people again and trying to dumb us down and shit all over us. So it's happening again. So you might want to think about who the Freemasons actually are.
Yeah, and you what acknowledge, again, there are those that are into the weirder stuff and the nefarious stuff.
Look, before I even was researching into, the mega cities they're talking about now, right?
Yeah.
The smart cities all being rebuilt. While all the shit was being burned down, perfect to rebuild as a smart city with a grid and surveillance and everything else, right?
Yeah.
So I got into a real severe argument with a guy who claimed to be a Mason. He knew some stuff about Masonry. I pretty quickly ascertained that he was a clandestine lodge member, okay? Gentleman from Washington, D.C., mind you. Connected, you could tell. His money depended on the liberals and the globalism and all that sort of shit. But he literally said to me before the election with Trump, said, if you denounce Trump, walk away from that, and join us, your family and you will be welcome in one of he called it the last cities, right? And the one that he was talking about was in Cambodia.
Yeah, I remember you
saying this. Right?
Yeah.
So, fast forward to these days, what's going on and what the plans are, and you go, fuck, guy knew what was coming.
Well, I mean, you're talking about those smart cities, right? And that kind of circles back why I even got into this whole Masonry thing. So there's this film called The Holy Mountain. I mean, the whole thing is just occult symbolism from the very beginning to the very end. And one of the portions of it, and I don't know if I don't even know if you'll be able to get through it, Pat. It is the wildest thing ever. I don't even know how to describe it. It's this 1970s film that had a crazy budget that Alan Klein, who was a producer for the Beatles, funded. And there's this Jesus character through the whole thing. Like, he's not Jesus. Again, esoteric Jesus.
A lot of followers.
I mean, I don't even want to say it like that. Like, they call him the Fool. So there's so much outward symbolism throughout the whole thing. But at one point, they're in a gymnasium, but it's supposed to be just a get-together of the elites. So all these people in suits with their trophy wives are there, and they reel out this giant phallus for the women, like this ice phallus, like showing that they want like real men, but they're beholden to like this upper class of like shitheads, and they're all just eating chicken and like just being gross, just obvious greed. So they got a magician that comes out, okay, and the magician presents a naked woman who is under his hypnosis and a slave basically, and she crawls, doesn't even step into a coffin, okay, just a coffin. Now, these coffins are then set up as he unveils the city of the future where everybody's going to be happy, where they're lined up Matrix style, citywide. So they don't even let the people step into their coffins. They have to crawl into them.
Yeah.
And they live in the coffin. And I'm not even kidding you. They have trucks. This is a 1972 film, I think, where they say they're going to convince the people to do this and that the trucks will come in to make sure that they get food and that they can take the waste out, and they're gonna love their slavery.
Wow.
And YouTube, I mean, I get hit just because of the copyright from the film. It's a pretty popular underground film called The Holy Mountain. Guys, if you want to check out my breakdown on that, you can see it on the Rockfin, where I don't get censored. And it's wild because every time I look at it, it looks like a mini setup for The Matrix. And it's like, wow, this has really been around that long.
Wow.
And these people have really wanted to do this. And now we're at the level where technology is here. And, we were talking about even our brainwashed neighbors here, right?
Yeah.
We were talking about the shaming that some people were giving to businesses that dared not make people wear masks on the Super Bowl and were open.
Right.
Talk about that. I mean, that's pretty shocking.
It is. And, well, I was just thinking, it jumped into my head when you talked about old films and this and that, and I apologize for just going straight into this.
No, it's fine.
But, we know that Rockefeller many years ago donated massive amounts of money to medical schools, had them change their doctrine, go away from homeopathic to prescription-based, treatment of just the symptoms, not curing people, all that sort of shit. Partly based on his greed about being able to use petroleum products in prescription drugs, all that sort of stuff, which continues to today, right? What year did Reefer Madness come out? And what year was Rockefeller, that period of years that he was pushing this, right? Mm-hmm. It's like, get rid of, any herbal ways of curing people, natural ways of curing people, Eastern medicine, all this sort of stuff, and just feed people full of shit, right? Just feed them full of... So that's the thing. It's old films that go back. You can see how they use their power and their money through films and everything else. The propaganda films of World War II, things like that, right? That were shown in movie theaters. Before the film you went to watch, you would watch a 10, 15-minute film on the war front of what was going on, right?
Yeah. And they kind of brought that back after the War on Terror. It wasn't a 10, 15-minute film, but now you went to the movie theaters, and traditionally you got a little trivia maybe for the upscale ones, and then you got your previews, and now you had full-on 30-second, 60-second military ads with a rock song from 3 Doors Down or something. Exactly. It literally looks like a Hollywood movie. It almost looks like Tug Speedman in what was it? You know which one I'm talking about?
Oh God.
Why can't I It's like the best parody of war movies ever, and I can't think of it. It's the one with Robert Downey Jr. in blackface.
Oh.
Come on. Oh,
something.
Tropic Thunder.
Yeah,
it's Tropic Thunder, and it's you look at that and it looks like it would be for the Ben Stiller character or whatever, but no, it's for our military, and that continues. That's another thing I see today. They've made it so, but now it's more geared towards the video game thing because they've gotten boys and girls hooked on the video games,
right?
And that's another thing. Whether people want to believe it or not, our culture has definitely been socially engineered to normalize women in men's roles, okay? And don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to say that women shouldn't be able to do the same things men do.
Right.
But those traditional roles have been flipped on their head, and if you think that's an accident, it's not. It goes even...
So much so that men think they're women.
I mean, over the top. So much so that even if you wanted to go to the terminology... Because somebody asked me on the chat yesterday, they were like, are you LGBT rights? And I said to myself, LGBT, you stop there. I'm great with that. We didn't go to Q or IRS or binary or any of that. Because when I was a kid, all those things were real. You knew if, somebody, a gay man or a lesbian, or it was a transvestite or a transsexual. And you would often ask whether it was post-op or pre-op, right? Now, it's transgender. They've taken the whole real terminology out, and they've tried to get rid of the XY chromosome, and then they'll tell you not only is it transgender, but you can be fluid. And if that's not good enough, you can identify as non-binary, where apparently you're just a computer code literally in the matrix they're selling you on, Pat.
That's it, man. And it's... he, him, she, her, all these... Look, I'm older than you are.
Yeah, not much.
This is I feel like my grandma going from covered wagons when they founded their homestead, to seeing cars for the first time, to a guy landing on the fucking moon in her lifetime. Mm-hmm. I'm seeing that with human beings changing into something that I don't even recognize. Like, they're not even fucking human. They will not think for themselves. They refuse to think for themselves. They refuse to question the narrative that they're being fed every day. And that's the most dangerous weapon on earth right now. Mm-hmm. That is the most dangerous thing on earth right now. That causes masses to lose their shit, kill massive amounts of people, and get themselves killed, right? I'm talking bodies piled all over the fucking place simply because they wouldn't think for themselves or question the narrative with us. And go, you know what? They might actually be saying, there might be some truth to what they're saying. Maybe I should look into that. I'm the guy who was questioning a lot of shit my whole life. Watching Walter Cronkite when I was a little kid on the living room floor. But I got into the rah fucking America, go, blow the fuck out of Iraq and Afghanistan, and because they fucking knocked down the Twin Towers. And I think I was UFC champ or somewhere. No, it was after that. I was coaching. And Justin Holstein, who you know very well, was on the film crew, the UFC film crew, at my gym filming the team training and all that sort of stuff. And he and I started talking about stuff, politics. And he's like, dude, you ever looked into Cheney and his background? You know, you ever heard the name Halliburton, you know, the oil thing, you know? And he didn't know me. He only knew me as a fighter, and he was trying to tiptoe around it with me, thinking that if he just told me how it was, I was going to fucking lose my shit.
What we were discussing tonight, changing minds, right? Mm-hmm. There were some people said you couldn't change mind, but Holstein, somebody who, this is your experience where your mind was changed, he probably found a point of agreement, and he said, yeah, but maybe you should look at this.
And he never changed my mind. It ended up being that way. Yeah. But all he did was plant the seed in a guy who would at least accept, okay, maybe the narrative isn't what I'm being fed isn't the narrative, right? Maybe I should look into this a little deeper. And that's all I ask now of people is just look into it. Take the fucking time to look into it instead of making me go, I can't hold a conversation with you. Mm-hmm. I can't even fucking talk to you because you refuse to see any counters to the narrative. It's impossible. It's impossible. It's more frustrating than there's nothing more frustrating.
It is frustrating, but like I said, the point of agreement, the finding somebody with honey, to the point where, all right, he talks about Halliburton. I remember one of the things that really blew my mind when I was first going into this stuff was the Bushes and the Bin Ladens have been into business together for decades.
Yeah.
And I was like, what do you mean for because again, if you're just Joe Schmo or Jason Burmis or Pat Miletich and you're watching the news, all that you've ever heard about Bin Laden is he's a rich Saudi billionaire bad guy terrorist.
Right.
That's it. He's the black sheep of the family. You don't know anything about his family. You don't know anything about the Mujahideen. Right. You don't know anything about his role in the Cold War.
Right.
You don't know anything about the Pakistani ISI. You don't know anything about the Taliban or any of these things that come out of it. Just he's the bad dude. And then you find out that the Bush family going back to the 50s and his family are making tens of millions of dollars
huge construction projects and all kinds of stuff, right?
Exactly. And you're like, whoa, that's really fucking weird.
And that's where you draw the conclusion where when I talk to former Navy SEALs, I'm not questioning the guy directly, Robert O'Neill, who's the shooter of Bin Laden.
Or says he is, or
Yeah, but I look, either way, I respect the guy. He was a badass enough to become a Navy SEAL.
Yeah.
I respect somebody just based on the ability to do that, right? Mm-hmm. But that's not saying he couldn't be compromised or paid off or whatever to lead a certain narrative. But many Navy SEALs, former Navy SEALs that I'm friends with, have gone, I don't think Bin Laden's dead. Why would they kill him? The families of the Bushes, as you just said, and the Bin Ladens, business associates making money together.
Well, going back to the censorship, that story out there that they got a double, right? That one that about 6 to 12 months ago now. It actually wasn't 12. It's about 6 months ago where, they had these recorded phone calls of Kurt Weldon who brought out Abel Danger, and you had the Iran deal, and they even questioned Trump about it on... it wasn't 60 Minutes, but it was basically about a couple weeks before. It's where they called him the crazy conspiracy theory uncle. Because he had tweeted, and he said, look, let the people decide whether or not he was really killed there or not. Yeah. And you got to remember, I always point to this when we talk about Bin Laden and his death and the pirate to sea and all that stuff, is that Seymour Hersh, the same guy that really published the in-depth, I mean, we go back decades, but the in-depth stuff from WikiLeaks that let us know about the torture at Abu Ghraib, the child abuse, the C-130. He was the one who wrote that all up. His last big thing was on the Bin Laden raid and how there was so much that wasn't explained and so much that was falsified. Right. And since then, the only thing that supposedly he worked on was that Seth Rich story. And we only know that because of the private phone calls that were recorded. And that never saw the light of day. And I have my issues with Hersh. I certainly do. But, you listen to Hersh on that phone call, and he's very candid. I don't fuck around with guys like that. Those fucking guys scare me. They got fucking everybody. I mean, just the fucking way he was fucking cursing and talking I can relate to. Sure. But how he said, look, man, guys like that scare me. And then you find out that his FBI source is McCabe. McCabe is one of the most demonstrous people in this whole story, right? Yeah. No. So absolutely. It just shows you the circle of vipers, right? I got for instance, he's talking up Mattis, and I specifically remember when that op-ed piece came out about Trump, and it was from somebody in his administration. They said that was the big thing, and I said, hands down, I think that's James Mattis. It still hasn't been revealed yet, but I mean, Mattis just took another swipe at him last week.
Well, that's the thing, is something where Marines and just military people back in the day revered Mattis so much. But now, dude, they're like, he's compromised. He's been compromised. This is...
I mean, the Syria thing should have let him know that.
Yeah, but they just can't believe. They can't believe what's happened.
So what do you think that is? I mean, you're a leader. I mean, you're a leader as in a group of literal warriors, right? Do you think that it's just that you look up to somebody else has helped you accomplish things maybe you didn't even think that you were capable of? They enabled that in you. And so when a certain reality comes in, right, it's just too much. You just can't do it.
That would be like saying Dan Gable is a satanic pedophile. Like, that shit.
It couldn't happen.
I know that's not the fact.
I know. Let's get that
That's
out
like
of the
the last guy on the planet that would do something like that to a child. Because he's a true fucking badass, right? But, you sit there and you think. I've joked around on it on my podcast before with Jeff. And I've gone, we're just going to stay on the third rail with every show. Push the envelope. Expose the truth. I know people are being bought out. I know people are being paid off to just push the left-right narrative, not what we're pushing, right? And eventually somebody is going to come to me in a suit and go, you need to shut the fuck up. You're going to get $1 million a year for 10 years if you shut the fuck up and just push the left-right narrative, right? Because people have been compromised, right?
100%. Listen, I got an interesting comment in the chat here. Going back to the Bin Laden story, just overall, just so everybody understands, I don't know exactly what's going on there because this one said, I don't know if you remember this, but Benazir Bhutto, who at the time, was running again in India. Her father had been the leader there. She was getting a lot of press. Went on national television.
Was she the one that was assassinated?
Yeah, she was assassinated after this.
Yeah.
So she went on television. I think it was within 6 months of her saying this too, by the way.
Right.
She said Bin Laden had been killed. Now get this. This is where it gets really interesting. She says that his assassination had been put together by Omar Saeed Sheikh. Now that's the same guy that's behind the Daniel Pearl beheading. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's the same guy that wired $100,000 to Mohammed Atta just prior to 9/11 through General Mahmoud Ahmed, the head of the ISI, and the same guy that right now is in a safe house in the UK because Saudi Arabia let him go. Pakistan let him go, and now the United States is posturing, and they're not talking about the things we're talking about, the accused bin Laden assassination or the 9/11 connection, but the Pearl connection.
Right.
They're saying they want him extradited to the United States, and it doesn't look like the UK is going to play ball. He's a UK citizen.
Interesting.
So this guy, is he a single agent? Is he a double agent? Is he a triple agent? You know, obviously he worked with the Pakistani ISI.
Right.
Are we talking about CIA? Are we talking about MI6? Are we even maybe talking about Mossad? You know what I mean? That's where it gets murky, especially with guys like this who, like you said, Benazir Bhutto ends up being and not a hey, we're going to shoot you in the head assassination. They had somebody roll up on her in her bulletproof thing. Already failed once, by the way. They failed once. Then shot at her. They had a second person come in. So the guy who went to shoot her and kill her had no idea he was about to die too, because they brought somebody in as the suicide bomber in the crowd,
right.
and he pulled the vest. So you talk about, I mean, there's some levels of it.
Oh,
you're just an assassin. You know, you've probably done it a dozen times, or God knows what. This is your biggest one, but they got you by the balls. You go in. You don't know you're getting blown up. You're the guy in the suit. You know, you're the guy in the suit.
You're the Lee Harvey Oswald.
Yeah, you know, exactly. And I mean, that's a wrap.
Yeah.
So it just shows you layer upon layer of this this narrative deception out there, man.
Speaking of deception, we should talk about Antifa, Black Lives Matter, the Trump movement, all these, you know, where, you know, that we had talked about for a long time, knowing that people were being paid, the proxy armies of Antifa, certain violent elements that were bussed in at nightfall, you know, to Black Lives Matter movements that were peaceful during the day. And then people were brought in, obviously, people being paid to come in, burn shit down, attack people, you know, loot, just cause mayhem.
Because that's far from the entire movement. The vast majority of those people are, you know, just want their voice heard, and they want the system to work for them, whether they're right or wrong.
And early on in that whole thing with Black Lives Matter, all I saw was shit getting burnt down and violence. And I'm like, well, what, are they all getting fucking paid? What the fuck's going on, right? And obviously it elicited some emotions out of me. And I wasn't obviously happy about it. Antifa, those fuckers are just straight up goons, right? We know that.
It's tough. They love to LARP. I mean, their outfits are pretty serious, right?
They're the biggest amateurs on the planet. You and I both know that if we had to, we'd go through 100 of them pretty quick.
Pat Miletich would. Jason Burmis, I don't know if I get through a dozen. I might throw my back
you'd get through
out.
At least 75. But, you know, but where the light bulb really went off was coming up on the January 6th event in Washington, D.C., and obviously the word was out. You know, there were flyers that were posted, you know, brothers and sisters, you know, Antifa, you know, comrades in arms, you know, wear Trump gear, infiltrate the crowd, do all of this, do all of that. And I'm like, okay. And I saw a few people who definitely were not Trump people, right? Wearing all black with backpacks with baseball bats hanging out of them, walking through the middle of the Trump, a million people with Trump shit on. No, they never got attacked. They were trying to get people to attack them. By the way, they were carrying baseball bats and everything else. They never got attacked. But knowing, and now the media is even saying that Trump wasn't to blame. It was a setup. It was pre-planned and all that sort of shit. And when we witnessed what happened at the Capitol, when they opened the barriers and the crowd started to go up the hill because the cops were waving them up the hill, and they were doing the same thing on the other side of the Capitol with the crowd. And then the riot gear clad fucking goons come in and start hammering them with stun grenades and tear gas and rubber bullets and OC spray. So just deliberately, hey, you know, it's like somebody knocks at your front door. Open the door. Oh, hi, what's your name? Jim. Jim, you know what? Come on in, sit down, have some fucking iced tea with me. And they walk past you and you go, drill them in the side of the fucking head. And now you got a fight on your hands. Now you just pissed them off. You cheap shotted them. That's exactly what the setup was at the Capitol. And then on top of that, you've got the fucking goons, the Antifa goons that infiltrated, that have been proven on film, the Sullivan guy and a bunch of these other people. Yep. So it was all a fucking setup. And
what are your thoughts on the pipe bombs? So, like, that's one of the things that's really interesting and intriguing to me is that the media is kind of running with this narrative that they had those pre-planted bombs, right? We got the video of the person all the way dressed up, dropping them off. No bombs ever go off.
Right.
And then they never find this person.
Right.
Now, that's problematic.
It's the poor bastard in what park it was in Atlanta that the FBI framed for setting off the bomb.
Yeah, you're talking, and that Lynn Wood's the one that was his
Defended
attorney.
him?
Yeah, Richard Jewell you're talking about. Yeah.
You know, it's that sort of shit, but they didn't frame the guy because obviously he was working for him.
Well, it's just so funny that Richard Jewell, I mean, that whole case, they never, even though he got exonerated, and it took forever.
It destroyed his fucking life.
Didn't he die before they actually...
I think so.
Yeah, I think, not before he got exonerated, but before the lawsuit was won in his name, that they knew that he wasn't responsible, and they still tried to pin it on him. I don't believe they ever came up with who actually did that.
Right.
And whenever that happens, you know, you got to ask yourself, well, why is it...
He was marked and set up from the beginning.
Yeah. Why is it that you have these cases where they can't seem to find anything, but then, like on a 9/11, within moments, the media almost in lockstep has a name.
Because they know already. And here's the thing. It spreads like wildfire. You've got, you know, these shitbags at Bloody Elbow, right? These guys are, they're so far left.
I'm an MMA junkie guy, but
it's right. Well, but it's impossible.
MMA Weekly.
But you know, they were the ones that ran with the story saying that I took a loan from the government, but I'm a capitalist, right?
Yeah.
It was like what a $5,000.
Wait, capitalists don't take loans? Because I'm pretty sure that's almost exactly how it works.
Right. But it was from the government, right?
Uh-huh.
So I've got to pay that back because it was a loan, right? But either way, you know, Bloody Elbow's the one that ran with that, and Tito Ortiz and other people who took out loans who were, you know, patriots.
Well, they don't like that Tito won office. You know, I mean, love him or hate him, you know, he won an election.
Yeah.
You know, and now you're going to have to hear about him. And
Right.
now he's going to run his mouth about politics and more. And they don't, and listen, again, love him or hate him, I think Tito's a genuine guy. And he is kind of one of those guys that's going to fire off how he feels.
Sure.
Period.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah. So, but, you know, in terms of that, and then, you know, this guy that I thought was my friend releasing this story that's complete bullshit based on no facts whatsoever, saying, Pat, I can't even fucking tell you how far of a reach it is to say that the headline that said, Pat Miletich supports domestic terrorism and white supremacy. And I just went, my heart sank, and I was like, what a piece of shit. What a backstabbing piece of shit to do that, right?
Yeah.
I would never set out to destroy someone's life because I had a disagreement with them, right? Mm-hmm. So I sat there, I had to process this and go, okay, so I've been involved in mixed martial arts for 3 decades as an athlete, as a coach, and as a broadcaster, and they're just now figuring out I'm a fucking racist? Like,
today's the day.
How fucking retarded are people, right? I've had so many comments on social media when that started of people going, you piece of shit, you deserve what you get, this and that. And I just want to go, man, I feel bad for these people that without even knowing me or knowing my history or knowing that, just one example, put 95 athletes on TV, different color, race, right? All that. How much money did I take from any of those kids out of their fight purses, Jason?
I go with 0.
Fucking 0. The only people that ever gave me money walked up voluntarily like Matt Hughes and wrote me a check for just, you know, whatever. Mm-hmm. Just thank you for your help, right? And Matt was making millions, so yeah, I'll take a small check, you know. Mm-hmm. It certainly wasn't 10%, right? But I never took any money from any of those guys.
You were way outside of, just so people understand what a Jackson Wink or an AKA today is, where there's an allotted percentage and all those type of and that's not to knock them, you know, like I go to these events all the time. I see Dan Lambert and his crew there.
Right.
And, you know, I mean, those have been around and now they've made it into a business, but you were kind of in that era where it was just forming up into that business.
Well, but still, here's the thing. Mm-hmm. Our manager, Monty Cox, was taking 20%.
Gotcha.
Make no mistake. He built a fucking mansion and made millions of dollars off my work.
Yeah.
I still love the guy. But he was thinking about money where I was thinking about helping people,
Gotcha.
right? And my point is I was helping people, whether they were brown, black, white, Asian, because I saw myself in them as a young athlete struggling financially or having a bad childhood like me and just wanting them to fucking experience some greatness in life. And I learned through wrestling, football, and certainly MMA to value a human being on just how hard they fucking try, right? You know, I'll give you this. I don't care who you are, what color you are, anything like that. If you're giving 100% in practice, trying your ass off, and your fight record is 5-5, you're never going to make it to the UFC. And then I've got a guy over here who's 20-0, doesn't even fucking have to try because he's so God gifted. I don't give a fuck about that guy. Like, I'm going to help the guy that's really trying. That's
the Casey Sabolkas of the world.
Well, right. But the guys that,
like the dark horses.
Fucking Rudy, right?
Look at Mark Hunt, man. Mark Hunt turned a sub 500 career into maybe a legendary one.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Sure,
I mean, there are those people. And for those that don't know, Mark Hunt is this guy that came out of K1 striking. Really didn't have a lot of the ground game.
Right.
He'd get on the ground, not know what to do, get Kimura'd a lot over in Japan.
Sure.
They wanted to just pay off his contract in the UFC, say, take this money, we're going to let you go. And he said, no, I got fights. They gave him fights. He improved his ground game tremendously.
Right.
And he made a run at the title, and he's one of my favorites. Like, I love.
Yeah. So my point is it's sad that people are shallow enough now where they can read a headline and just assume you're a bad human being. Never mind the fucking several decades of just working your ass off, bordering for it. When my team was number one in the world for a decade, we were kicking the shit out of
everybody, guys.
Everybody. For 10 straight years. I was bordering on bankruptcy the entire fucking time.
Jesus.
Because I didn't want to take any money from those guys, and I barely kept the lights on in my gym. People can go, well, that's because you're a dumb motherfucker. No, it's because I was passionate and I gave a fuck, and I wanted to build champions, and I wanted to see people get their arm raised and go, I helped him fucking do that, right? Or her, whatever.
I watched a couple fights the other day where you're in the corner, man. There's nobody happier when you win a fight when Pat's in your corner than Pat Miletich, man.
It's an amazing experience. So, what this has taught me, though, out of everything is I appreciate a lot more the things that I have, right? I appreciate the friends that I have, because there's a lot of people that I thought were my friends through this. I haven't heard a fucking peep out of them.
Really, after all this?
Right.
And it's so ironic because, again, they want to play this white supremacy card and the Proud Boys are domestic terrorist groups. And then you find out that this Enrique Atario, number one, not a white guy.
Dominican?
Yeah. And I actually interviewed him the last time I was in D.C. in December.
Right.
I caught him outside the day before the big rally there. And I talked to him for like a couple minutes. Seemed nice enough. Now, I don't know what his involvement in the past with the FBI has been and informants and this and that. But I know that I've never had to inform on anybody in the FBI. You know what I mean? I look at that and it's like, well, what did you do in your life? Because it's not like everybody runs up and volunteers to the FBI. There's got to be something either they leverage you on, or you're even worse, you're looking to make some money as an informant or something crazy. So I think to myself, all right, is this guy just compromised? He do something fucked up and now he's here?
Well, but at the same time, as we know, Antifa is a proxy army.
Yeah.
The infiltrated part of Black Lives Matter is a proxy army. The people who were responsible for the violence at the Capitol on January 6th, part of a proxy army. Who's to say some of the Proud Boys aren't leaders of a proxy army and get people emotionally attached and right?
Well, that's the whole thing. I mean,
we specialize in fucking proxy armies all over the world. So what would make you think that our politicians, who are complete shitbags, wouldn't then eventually form proxy armies in their own nation to just completely fucking take over?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think back to even Fahrenheit 9/11, right? That's ancient, right? That's ancient news. That's 2003, I think 2004. But Michael Moore even doing those visits with those like anti-war groups where everybody was just like 60 or over and they're meeting in a barber shop and they had 2 or 3 like informants in a group of 20.
Yeah.
So you gotta understand, there's no doubt that in a group of 500 or 1,000 or 1,500 or 2,000 that become active in a place like DC,
right?
There's got to be a dozen, right? At least.
And there was almost probably, we were guessing, close to 1 million people in DC that day. I mean, that was a bunch of Michigan football stadiums, right? Of people. What's somebody asking on there?
No, I see Jamie Deluxe in there, who's another excellent YouTuber.
Jamie's awesome, man.
Yeah, Jamie is. Yeah. Shout out to Jamie Deluxe. He says, "That's why you never buy a truck. Can you help me move?" I mean, listen, I got my car's making a banging noise. I think I hit the sway bar on it. It's way too low. I got to get me a truck.
Yeah, well, you live in Iowa, man. It's gonna.
Yeah, I got to do
have
a
snow
four-wheel drive vehicle.
All the crazy shit going on, but no. So it's the talk of the meeting tonight that was in a non-disclosed what's that?
Non-disclosed bunker type location.
Yeah, Mark Levine, which that guy's a left-right paradigm guy, right?
Listen, Levine kills me. I did a video. I lost a lot of subscribers. We're talking about, I had to be over a year ago. I think it was pre-COVID, and it was.
But we can't at the same time be like the left. Because we know they're eating each other. I'm not trying to.
Yeah, see, they eat your own thing, but the only. It's
we're
like
grown-ups. We're grown-ups. We can criticize each other.
Yeah, well, it's just it was the pro-Iranian war propaganda. It was the limpet mines and all that stuff that was going on.
There was an attack on an oil line, a pipeline. Then there was mortars into the green zone. There were mortars, and then they're attaching mines to Japanese tankers But the mines, the explosives were attached above the fucking water line.
Yeah, why would that ever happen?
It was never intended on. And I had a guy confront me, a fellow Mason, going, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "There were Iranian flags on the side of the boats." And I go, "You don't think people have money for fucking stickers to put on the side of a fucking boat? Are you kidding me, dude?"
That's what the whole thing. It kills me because again.
What do you think the pallets of cash were for? Fuck. Right?
When I saw the videos of that, and again, no casualties, and it came in conjunction with that weird drone.
Hold on a second. That was drone footage, and I'm guessing that drone was weaponized.
Yeah.
But they just sat there with their cameras filming people put explosives on the side of a vessel.
Yeah.
And didn't shoot them.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Well, not only that, Pat, didn't shoot them after they left.
Right.
When they were clear.
Yeah.
And send a team in.
Right.
Like, there's just so many things that were wrong with it.
Right.
Not to mention the footage that they showed you looked like technology that's been around for, again, 34. It's the same technology we were seeing Iraq War in 2003. Guys, just so everybody knows, the magic box in my pocket, if I had one in my pocket right now, its camera is immensely better than the Magic Box 5 years ago and the Magic Box before that.
But
Can you
not.
Imagine?
But light years better than the cameras outside of Shitbag's cell when he hung himself.
Yeah, when he hung himself. Man, that whole thing right now. I mean,
did we ever get to see a body on that, like for real or anything?
I saw just about every picture they released, including what 60 Minutes released. Because 60 Minutes was the one that asked the question.
Was it him or Anthony Bourdain?
It was not Anthony Bourdain. That kills me every time. See, that drives me nuts.
I said it to fuck with
you.
I
know, but you know what? Some people believe it, and it's like Bourdain. I'm not saying he was murdered, but that's something maybe that should get looked at.
Maybe Bourdain looked through his emails and his text messages and all that sort of shit and find out what he was into or what he knew about.
I mean, he was dating that shady ass girl too.
Right.
That she's shady.
Right.
Like she had been accused of pedophilia herself.
Right.
With a 16-year-old boy. On top of that, her dad is this famous director of schlocky, satanic Italian horror. I mean, hardcore, ritualistic,
killings.
Yeah, I mean, it's not real.
Yeah.
But those type of movies. And
the body hung upside down on a crucifix and sliced open shit.
Yeah, Argentina, right? Because it was Asia Argentino that he was dating. I think it's Salvia Argentino was the father or whatever. Okay. But I remember him talking about how crooked the Clintons and the Clinton Foundation was.
Yeah.
And how, I watched that show on occasion. I didn't quite think it was as good as everybody hyped it up to be, but clearly the guy was a liberal. He was clearly a progressive, but he also had, an independent streak. I specifically remember I watched the one where he went to Israel and Iran. You know what I mean? And I found that one extremely interesting because apparently his bloodline, he was Jewish, but he wasn't religious. And he went to the wall and he did one of the rituals with the people and he sat down. And I thought, all right, I see why people like this. The guy's pretty introspective, and I'd watched him on Rogan too. So I think there's a possibility, especially the way he talked about Clinton Foundation, he could have been killed. He was overseas. David Carradine, a lot of people don't talk about his death. They said, that he died.
Hung himself on a bicycle in a shower.
Like, come on.
With a dildo on the seat post.
Yeah, like, anytime I hear autoerotic asphyxiation, I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but I'd say it probably happened in the case of Robin Williams, and they covered that up, since they found him in a seated position, in rigor mortis, with a belt around his neck, in a doorway. So he didn't hang himself, folks. And when they found his body, you can watch the sheriff tell you this, and they actually postponed his autopsy, and again, you can look it up
till the rigor mortis went away?
Well, no, they postponed it because they had to ask his wife if he was an autoerotic fan. So like again, they never came out and said he did that.
Right.
But all the things that they said, the note, or that he had failed by cutting himself, with all that stuff fell by the wayside. Right. Bottom line is when they found him, he was seated and he had a belt around his neck. It was that. So they cover that up, but then with Carradine, they said...
So before you move on with the autoerotic asphyxiation, I'd never heard that term.
Yeah.
I thought it was just masturbating while you were trying to hang yourself.
Yeah.
But so I'm a guy who I got choked unconscious one time in my entire life. It was by Jotaro Nakao from Japan. Unreal fighter, incredible triangle choke, put my ass to sleep, right? So I'm not a fan of getting choked by anything or anyone.
Yeah.
So I'm not practicing that shit.
So I gotta tell you this. Let's not get too raunchy on the show, but I'll be like, I gotta tell, like,
you're admitting that you've done it.
No, like I was gonna say, like, in my run as a bar guy and a bartender, some of the girls that I would end up bringing home every once in a while
asked you to choke them.
Yeah. And it's like yeah, and I'm like, listen, I'm not super vanilla, but I'm also not fucking let's leather daddy it up and fucking ball gag. And there's just something about it that I don't love having my hand around a girl's neck. So what I would try to do is I'd take my forearm, and I just kind of lean into it and look away. Because I'm just like, why am I choking this girl? Like, and she's, or
you could have just said, I really am not into that.
I mean, in the heat of the moment, you got to figure something out.
Look, if you're not performing good enough without choking the shit out of somebody, there's a fucking problem.
I guess. I don't know. I thought I was doing well. It was kind of like I had to double take. Like, what? You want me to what? Oh, Spanish, I miss you. You have a kid and you're married now. Great. Anyway.
That's great.
Anyway.
Oh my goodness.
But all right, so to go back to Carradine, they said that's what happened to Carradine.
Right.
But they sent an FBI, basically his family.
He was on a bicycle in the shower.
And he said, I think this guy said, again, I could be wrong, but he said he was hung in the closet with his arms bound behind his back and his legs bound.
Wow.
Like, he said there's no way
he could have done it.
He's no way.
Right.
And, anytime something like that happens overseas, Quentin Tarantino, he did a big interview, I think it was on Howard Stern, and he said that Carradine was there doing research for a documentary on the Yakuza. And he thinks that he crossed the wrong people.
Interesting.
And they did that to him. But it's just weird how culture works, because you have Robin Williams, right? Who, by the way, do you know he did a movie about autoerotic asphyxiation? Full movie about it.
How do you do a full movie about that?
So let's talk about it. He did a movie called Father of the Year.
You realize after this conversation, I'm going to be slightly traumatized and have a little difficulty sleeping.
Yeah, sure, but Rob Williams still a funny guy. Like, and no matter what happened to him, guys, still a funny guy. I know he stole a lot of jokes. Still a funny guy. So he does this movie called Father of the Year, where it kind of opens with him walking in on his kid, doing autoerotic asphyxiation. He thinks his kid's dead, and he scares the shit out of him. But his kid's a dick, and he throws him out. And the guy's a teacher, and he doesn't know what to do. He's like a failed writer. Comes home again. This time it's a wrap.
Kid's dead.
Kid's dead. Now he doesn't know what to fucking do, so he hangs his kid up in the closet and writes a fake suicide note.
Wow.
And the whole thing is about how the suicide note ends up getting him famous, and like all of a sudden, this guy's like got fame and his writing, and people are listening to him, and it's like that journey of him having to kind of come around. But you ask yourself, I mean, don't get me wrong, he had some good dramatic roles. But why do you pick the dramatic role that involves autoerotic asphyxiation?
Right.
Obviously, the guy had a ton of substance abuse issues throughout his entire career.
Right.
And, you know, they're self-professed to be depressed in many respects.
Sure.
They're self-professed.
That desire to make people laugh.
Attention, the dopamine hits, whether it's the drugs, the sex, the booze, the laughter.
Right.
You know, you getting your hand raised in front of so many people.
Yeah.
People can't understand that rush, man.
Right.
Until you're there, and then craving again and again. And apparently with the autoerotic thing, like it's one of those Hollywood things that eventually you get into. I'll say this, he wasn't fucking kids as far as I know.
Right.
So it sucks the way he went out. But then that we can't be adults and talk about how that's probably, we got to sugarcoat it.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. No, and well, the Hollywood machine chews and spits up a lot of people, especially athletes who get mixed in with them, right? Look at Tommy Morrison. Dude, they chewed his ass up and spit him out quick.
There's another thing on Morrison again where they were challenging whether or not he had HIV at all. Again.
Like meth or something.
Who knows what it was? I watched Tommy, the ESPN 30 for 30.
Yeah.
And I how could you forget it? If you grew up in that era, number one, the thing was there were no white boxing champions. Combat sports, that was the big thing. In fact, I remember later on they made the Great White Hype, which was a big joke about it with a Don King character.
Right.
But Tommy Morrison was legit, and so much so that they brought him in for Rocky V. And he wasn't even just like the main character in Rocky V. He was like the almost adopted son that turns heel during the thing. So it couldn't have gotten any bigger than Tommy Morrison.
Right.
And then it was in that same era of Magic Johnson. And you just saw a very contrasting thing where, like you said, Tommy Morrison was kind of demonized.
Yeah.
And Magic Johnson, it was don't ask questions on how he got it.
Right.
Magic Johnson's just a great person. There's no way he was... the infidelity.
There's no way he screwed 3,000 women.
Yeah, or was maybe, and I'm not saying he is, but maybe a closeted homosexual. That's a question that still hasn't been asked today. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying that he is, but his son is I'm not sure if it's post-op yet, but is a transgender. Like the guy is now turned into a girl. Magic Johnson's son.
Oh, jeez. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I don't know one way or the other, but normally when that happens, you're questioning one of two things: your sexuality or your drug use, right? Like with HIV, especially in that era.
Yeah.
When it happened. And that just didn't happen. But with Tommy Morrison, it was like, well, how many women did you screw and how much cocaine did you do? And like, seriously, I still remember that, like, because that was still the era, around the same time as where Tyson.
I can tell you this.
Yeah.
Because I was pitching TV shows in California, and I had a show sold, a concept of mine. Mm-hmm. I was meeting with Kevin Riley of NBC before Tough came along.
Okay.
Right?
Yep.
Kevin Riley, my friend, the director, John Hirschfeld, said, I can get you 5 to 10 minutes with the head dude of NBC and his heads of programming. And he goes, so you need to get to the point, get this shit over with. Number one, people in Hollywood have the attention span of a fucking gnat, right?
The worst.
Yeah. So I'm in the head of NBC's office. I'm a little starstruck, obviously very nervous. I'm a young guy, but I've got a team that's kicking the shit out of everybody on the world, and it's a fucking soap opera. It's a man soap opera. It's great, right? So Kevin Riley, an hour later, like I was in his office for over an hour, and I had these guys laughing their asses off the entire time, right? And just couldn't believe what they were hearing about what fighters were doing for training, the crazy shit that went on, all this sort of stuff. And he was nice enough to at least call me those guys called me and said, we couldn't get it past the board. Like, they don't think that society is ready for you guys. Like, you guys are fucking full color. Like, we don't think society's ready for this level of, like, whatever, masculine, toxic masculine, whatever. But it wasn't long after that Spike, started Tough, right? And the guy that did Tough was sitting in the waiting room with me, and went into NBC offices with Kevin Riley after I met with him, right? And there's no way that fucking guy sold a show better than me, because he didn't get on NBC, right? But anyway, I tried selling a lot of shows, but the point is, we were putting together, it was going to be originally myself and Roy Jones that were going to fight each other, right?
Oh, wow.
And we had at least verbally agreed to do so. He just said, I got to get this fight done with in Australia, and then we can get to it. And we were going to do the show, lead up to it, all that sort of stuff, the training, and fight each other.
That would have been huge.
Right?
Yeah.
And he said he would do MMA with me.
Wow.
A 3-round fight, but I had to stand up with him for the first 5-minute round.
Dude, that's awesome.
So I could have been kicking and all that sort of stuff. And
You got great leg kicks.
Right.
You wouldn't have been ready for 3 of them.
Right. And back then, I didn't have the neck injury, so my arms worked really well, which wasn't going to save me against Roy Jones.
Well, Roy Jones was never a big knockout artist. I bet you keep him at distance.
Fuck, he wasn't.
Well,
he killed people.
Yeah, but people were coming in. He always kept his hands down, making people bait in.
Right.
I don't think Pat Miletich is the guy that's going to come in with a big
I'm kicking the legs and fucking kick the legs and duck. Kick the legs and duck.
That's what I'm saying.
Kick the legs and dive out of the way.
Yeah, if he closed the distance, you might want to Randy Couture his ass into that.
So what happened was he went and got knocked out in Australia. Screwed that up a little bit, to say the least, right?
Uh-huh.
So then it started with talks with Winky Wright and some of his representatives out of Detroit. And then there was one guy who was really fucking weird. I forget his name. But he was the one that put the two parties together because he knew us a little bit, right?
Uh-huh.
So he put us together. And that's why the deal fell through, because he demanded more than a 3% finder's fee out of all of it, right? But anyway, the meeting was in Beverly Hills at a real plush hotel. There was a huge suite. I'd never seen a suite so big in my life. And it was the Winky Wright's people and me and my people sitting down to negotiate the TV show, the reality show, and then the fight, right? Everything was going really good. But this is what I'm getting to. The Hollywood, the Beverly Hills, the weirdos out there, all that sort of shit. The people from the TV portion of the meeting, who were there also, who were going to do the reality show, the production company, hired a bunch of high-dollar hookers.
Oh, God.
To come in after the meeting and hang around and have drinks with us, right? And so, I'm an Iowa boy.
Yeah.
I'm married. Happily married, and I look at my manager and go, dude, let's get the fuck out of here. This is all wrong. Everything about this is fucking weird, right? So we left and got out of there. But either way, both those deals fell through. But the point was, Tommy Morrison in Hollywood, other people in Hollywood, how that shit
That's just
happened.
how it is.
Right.
Yeah. Listen, I was in enough meetings and met enough people. I couldn't wait to get out of there. I couldn't wait to get out of there because, first of all, you don't know anybody that's really being genuine. Even somebody that you think that you've made some kind of a connection with, you can never be sure.
Hollywood, home of the plastic people.
Exactly. That's why it's one of my least favorite places. Long Island's very similar. Miami's very similar. Like, it's what do you drive?
Right.
You know, like, oh, what kind of watch are you wearing? All those things. People couldn't give a fuck about you. And I think that...
That's why I love staying in Iowa.
Dude,
because people are just genuine.
Yeah, people are cool here, man.
Right.
You know, I was introducing myself to that group today, and I had one of my buddies come out, a little over a month ago, and he was like, "Man, the people are super nice here. I like it a lot."
Right.
Trying to get another one of my buddies to come out here for the fights coming up with Caged Aggression in about 5 weeks. He's really considering it. Every time I post just a 10-second video of me out in a bar, my friends back home, they can't believe it.
Right.
And I'm like, and I go, best part is they're actually cool people. Like, everybody's super nice here.
For the most part, because, and it's interesting too, because at least when I was growing up, and it still happens in Bettendorf, but not near as much, because we were such a powerhouse in football, wrestling, just, it's just that it was a town that had animals, like true fucking scary dudes, right?
Yeah.
The Pansloff brothers, the Hackett's, Picciottis, I can go on and on and on. The incredible wrestlers, football players, those types of guys. And when I had the UFC title, when you're considered one of the scariest dudes on the planet, when you own a UFC title, right? Obviously, be able to take care of yourself. And I tell people in interviews, I go, I'm like the 25th toughest dude in this 35,000 person town. Like, you don't understand how many people there are here that I have no desire to get in a street fight with, right? And that's just Bettendorf. Then you go over to Davenport, to the Alvino's Davenport Boxing Club, and the Michael Nuns and Antoine Eccles and Jayoma and Lang B. McGowan, and you go down the list of the, and the Bettendorf kids, the Pansloff brothers, were boxers down there as well. Dude, I mean, this area had straight up fucking killers, like all throughout the Quad Cities. They were some scary dudes.
Well, even Nick, man, I guess he's younger. I mean, he's still 34 now, but like he was 4-0 for you.
Yeah.
And we were calling the Overeem fight, and he was talking about some of the bar brawls he's gotten into or whatever. And I'm like, oh, is that how it goes, Nick? He's like, yeah, that's how it goes. And he's like the nicest guy. We went out and had drinks afterwards at the bar.
Right.
It just surprises me that could happen. But I guess, you get into some of the rougher areas, and it's a weekend night, and people are peacock walking around here.
Well, and back in the day, I mean, look, you weren't getting shot and stabbed every fight, right?
Yeah.
I got shot at a couple times. I had people pull knives on me. Luckily got through all of that stuff all right. But, I mean, without a doubt, and I never saw it as I was trying to start fights. Mm-hmm. I just wouldn't turn them down. And my buddy, co-founder of Firehorse Combatives, he was a police officer for many years and really tough guy, but he got in a lot of scraps when he was younger. Uh-huh. And he's about my size. He's a little more muscular, but we're about the same height and all that sort of stuff. And he goes, do you know why bigger guys always picked fights with us? And I go, why is that? And he goes, because we were a good win and a legitimate loss. So to a guy who's big, who's got booze in him, would look at us and go, you know what? I don't like the way that fucking cocky bastard act. I'm gonna pick a fight with him. Right?
Yeah.
And so it dawned on me that he's probably right, because I had, without a doubt, probably before my UFC career and all that, before I turned pro in fighting, an easy 200 street fights.
Jesus, Pat.
Easy.
I met somebody, man, what's his name? It's killing me. He's in shape too. He's got a beard and a mustache. He was talking about growing up on the same block as you. And he was just like, Pat was one of those guys, he'd ride for you. He'd do it. And I was like, really? He's like, since we were little kids, man, no doubt about it.
Because I got picked on so much as a kid that, and this is interesting, I haven't told people this story, that I, not much anyway.
Mitch, that's who it is.
Okay.
You know what I'm talking about? Yeah.
Yeah. So I got picked on so much as a kid. All my brothers are 6'5". I'm a skinny, bony little fucker. My backbone stuck out. I was that skinny of a kid. I look like a poor Cambodian kid with a fucking with a distended belly and no.
Don't believe him, folks. His head's giant. His hands are massive. Trust me. So there's some meat hooks.
So here's the thing, though. So anyway, I was in 8th grade. And it was after wrestling practice. And you got the shower towers with a bunch of heads on it, and there's a bunch of guys standing around each one taking a shower, right? And I got my eyes closed, and I'm scrubbing my hair, and all of a sudden, crack, I get nailed in the balls, and I drop. And it's the most horrifying pain. So what this guy had done, bully, took a towel, wetted it, and fucking snapped me perfect right in the nuts with it and dropped me. And I was sitting there bawling, and everybody's laughing at me. And I remember distinctly with the shower water hitting me in the head, laying on my side on a friggin' tile floor, going, mark my words, this is the last fucking day I get picked on. This is it. So what I did was, no, that was 7th grade. So, excuse me, what I did was I asked the principal, if I could bring a bag lunch to school every day and go to the weight room for lunch and eat my lunch and lift weights, right? So I did that through the rest of middle school. And then by high school, I was a little better athlete, all that sort of stuff, and started to excel. And I feel bad about it today. I probably should apologize to him. But that guy, that bully, was responsible, really, ultimately, for a big component of why I ended up being a good fighter.
The motivation.
The motivation. But I made sure to go at his weight in wrestling, even when I didn't weigh that. I wasn't big enough to be at that weight. And I made sure that he and I were competing for the same spot on the football field. So he was second string from then on the rest of his life.
Well, that just shows you, watch out who you bully, guys. Honestly, you might regret it. Karma can come slow or it can come super quick.
Right.
And I mean, for that fleeting moment of the ha-ha, funny that he got in the 7th grade for the next, 4 to 5 years of his life.
Yeah, so, it's that sort of shit, those life-changing moments when I was 7 years old. My dad left when I was 8. And my dad was, pretty abusive, to say the least. Mm-hmm. He saw me across the street in the backyard of the neighbor's house with a pellet gun in my hand. And at the same time, though, the dad was leaning against the back of the house. He was teaching me and his son how to shoot a pellet gun at a target on the other side of the yard.
Sure.
Right? Perfectly normal back then.
Yeah.
Right? So my dad, he was probably intoxicated, screams, tells me to get my ass over there. And I was trying to explain to him, but Mr. Turner and he's like ignoring me. Get to the bedroom, pull your pants down, bend over, and he rips his friggin' belt off. And so, but before he started beating me, I said to myself, I'm not going to make a sound. I'm not going to cry one tear. I'm not going to let this guy have space in my head ever again. This is where it stops, because he won't take my word for it, and he's going to physically beat the shit out of me. Like I'm lying to him, right?
Yeah.
So that was the worst beating he ever gave me.
Oof.
It was a bad beating, right?
Yeah.
So I turned around when he was done. He's probably wore out. Pulled my pants up and zipped them up, and I just looked at him. And went, "No, not anymore, dude. I'm 7 years old."
Yeah.
And he didn't leave. He left not long after that.
Yeah.
But he had to probably think to himself, like, "Fuck, like." So what the thing was that I tell people is, the gift that he gave me that day was that if I didn't want to feel pain, physical pain, I could literally ignore it. And I could. Mm-hmm. I fought with a broken leg. I fought 3 times in 1 year with a destroyed shoulder. I couldn't even throw a right hand.
Jesus.
Right? And I won all 3 of those fights.
Mm-hmm.
The one time that I threw the right hand on Andre Pederneiras, where I split his head open and they stopped the fight, my shoulder dislocated when I hit him.
Really?
Yeah, and they ended up stopping the fight, luckily. But I sparred for 8 months straight with my left hand and kicks only. You got to pay your bills, right?
Yeah.
You got to pay your bills. So
and that's just the mentality you're able to go with, huh?
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I guess to circle it back to the beginning of this, that's kind of what we have to do, right? Is find a way to fight through all this pain that's outward, right? And say, you might think that you're hurting me, but you're just making us stronger.
Yeah.
And you're just getting us more organized. And eventually, you guys are the ones that are going to pay for this. I don't know if it's ever going to happen, but we've got
eventually, that's the thing. Eventually, it always does, right? Minus the Nazis escaping and going to South America and being absorbed into our friggin' agencies.
I want to believe that there's karmic justice, but like we talked about before, it's just I feel like some people that buy into the evil so hard, literally have Palpatine level,
right?
And just like David, man, David Rockefeller rocked it out to 101. I was on this couch last night, curled up, and for some reason Henry Kissinger got into my fucking head, and I'm not kidding. And I'm thinking to myself,
what a piece of shit.
I'm just thinking Henry Kissinger
is still alive.
101, and he's gonna get to make decisions about my life till his last breath.
Yeah.
With a big cabal.
He and Soros and all the rest of them.
Soros is another one that looks like it, and it blows my mind. But then I'm like, you know what? How happy are those people? What's their family like? What's their contributions to them? Because another thing you talked about is that a lot of these people, the ends justify the means, and those means
any
are just
crime,
anything.
Say anything, do anything, it does not matter, right? so think of how far we've come from the discussions years and years ago about the Clintons and the Mena airport moving cocaine to fuel, campaigns for Arkansas governor, shit like that, right?
Yeah.
To now, the shit that's going on.
Well, you know what? If it got
and
too
that the
hot,
masses don't understand that the end game is depopulation by any means, literally.
Yeah.
That's what these people are. They're eugenicists.
Yeah.
Look up what a eugenicist is. They want to thin the fucking herd.
They do.
You and I aren't in the club, Jason.
No, there is no club for us. Unfortunately. I mean, George Carlin was brilliant on so many levels. Everybody knows that bit.
Right.
But I was playing a bit from maybe 10, 15 years before that. It was right around the wrap-up of the first Iraq War. And even then, he was talking about, we'll bomb your fucking country, all right. It's like, we can't fucking make anything here. We can't fucking teach anything. We can't do anything right. But you fuck with us, we can bomb your fucking country. It's like, we love to bomb brown people. And he's like, think about it. When was the last time we bombed, white people? He's like, yeah, it was the Germans. And that's because they were trying to horn on in our fucking action. He's like, that's our fucking job. It's great to this day, but he was right then.
Yeah, dude.
And so much of his stuff echoes to what's true today. Unfortunately, now, I don't know if a guy like George Carlin can exist. I don't know if a guy
because the sensitivity of the crowd, right?
Well, even the sensitivity of the crowd, or he says something that's off color and it gets pulled.
Right.
Like Joe Rogan's kind of built his own niche where he gets to toe the line a little bit sometimes, but he's really not on YouTube the same anymore. How many people are on that Spotify
He's come
platform?
a long ways from his early days when he was willing to question the narrative a lot.
Yes.
And now, well...
Not as much.
He changed his tune, and then you saw the reason why he changed his tune, because I have a feeling, and I love Joe. Joe's a brilliant mind. He's absolutely a brilliant guy. But somewhere along the line, he stopped going down the rabbit hole. Mm-hmm. And then $100 million dollar deal shows up.
Yeah.
So, that was like I said, my logic for, I'm going to ride the third rail on every conversation until they go, dude, you got to shut the fuck up. Like, people are actually starting to listen to you, right?
And then they're going to offer you a Heinz Heiress, and then you get your $500 million right there.
Poor liberal girl. I mean, body shots during sex, No, but the thing is, I think of, so I remember as a little kid, and nobody's going to know who I'm talking about, the Smothers Brothers.
I remember.
Like,
yeah. They brought them back a lot, too, back in the day, too. Like, my era, like, they would
But you think about their humor and how simple it was and how non-political it was.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
To Carlin. Or a Richard Pryor.
Yeah.
Or Richard Pryor.
If you look at Carlin, actually, before he has this transformation in the 60s and 70s.
Has an epitome.
Yeah. Well, he looks a lot like Tommy Smothers, like the one that doesn't have the mustache, right? I was right on that one. Like, he's literally got a very similar haircut. Mm-hmm. You almost don't recognize him, except for he's got the same damn voice when he was like 25 that he does today. But he was much more mainline comedy. Mm-hmm. And those guys were almost like gag they were physical comics.
Right.
You know what I mean? Yeah. Don't get me wrong, they touch on certain things about, the times or whatever, but it's mostly family based and very milquetoast and gags and musical comedy. They both had the guitars, I remember that. Yeah. But Carlin just did something totally different in my world, man. Because you know what the other thing was? I grew up in that first HBO generation, right? HBO, a lot of people don't remember. That's the only cable station that was around. Like, everything else was pretty much you could get. And Carlin, other than, remember they used to do those comedy specials with like Whoopi Goldberg and Robin Williams, and there was like The Relief or whatever. I forget what it was. Yeah. It's Comic Relief, I think it was.
Okay.
But he was the only one that they were given like a full hour to. And he was doing it like once a year, once every 2 years. And like every once in a while, my dad would let me stay up till 11 p.m. or something. I'd watch one of these things, and he'd be saying F words and stuff I didn't know. And then, back then, what was edgy was Andrew Dice Clay, right?
Oh,
he was getting all the attention because he was daring to talk about sex.
Very raunchy, though.
Very raunchy, sure. Yeah. But you look at that, and then you take their work, and don't get me wrong, Dice is funny or whatever. He's still around. I guess he's somewhat relevant now. But Carlin's stuff was way edgier when you think about it.
Absolutely.
Just way edgier and way more relevant.
Against the establishment.
Everything.
Yeah.
Everything. Whereas, look, I mean, Dice Clay, I mean, you couldn't punch down further. Everything was a punch. Everything was a racial joke. Or what dude did, you know. With Carlin, he was swinging up every time.
Yeah.
Every single time. And when he was taking a
much more intellectual.
Dude, I laughed my ass off that same bit about bombing brown people. He's like, and if you're above 12 years old and you're wearing your baseball hat backwards, grow the fuck up. he's like, even if you're a black guy, I get it. First of all, white guys, you're never going to be as cool as black guys. But black guys, let me tell you, you hit a certain age, 25, 40, I don't know what it is, turn your fucking hat Like, it was just great. I mean, I don't even know if you get a right way with saying I'll probably get called out in the comments. I can't have an opinion about it.
Well, here's an interesting thing, though. Alvino Pena.
Okay.
I was the only guy that went to his boxing gym that I know of that he never yelled at. Mm-hmm. He never yelled at me. I always went there, kept my mouth shut, did the work, sparred with hammers, bled for 3 years straight until I started being able to hang with people. I mean, that gym was scary to walk into. And I was a martial artist, a wrestler, a guy who was in combat for the most part my entire life. And walking into that gym was scary. It was a scary experience. But one day, I mean, he would yell at kids who'd walk in with their pants down low or their hat turned sideways. And he would literally scream at them with a very thick Mexican accent, "Fucking pussy, pull your fucking pants up. You fucking pussy, don't come in my fucking gym looking like that. Turn your fucking head around, you fucking pussy." Like, scream at them. And these kids are like, "Fuck, yes, sir." Right? And I would watch this and go, like, he is just verbally beating the shit out of everybody. Mm-hmm. Like, for instance, Jens, I brought Jens down to that gym. And he's down there, and Jens is in the UFC. And I'm like, you need to improve your boxing skills. Let's go down to the boxing gym, and you're gonna train and spar with some fucking straight up killers, right?
Yeah.
The boxing coach goes to Jens, he goes, "Shut your fucking mouth." And Jens is UFC champ, right? Yeah. Jens is like, "Oh, Jesus Christ." But so I asked Alvino one day, I said, you know, you've been doing this forever, since like 1970 or before, for 50 years, whatever, 40-some years. What drives you to come down here every day and do this? Because I go, you know, you yell a lot. And he goes, "I want these fucking kids to learn, you know, I want them to fucking learn what the real world is, that it's a harsh world, and get work ethic and all this stuff." And he genuinely cared about the kids. But the story that he told me, it hit me really heavy. His oldest son got drafted for Vietnam. Ooh. Right? And the Alvino boys were incredible boxers. Like, Mike Pena was the #1 ranked heavyweight amateur in the country. Pat Pena, straight up fucking killer. Matt Pena coached boxing at my gym. Worked a lot with Robbie Lawler and Matt Hughes and those guys. I just was getting overwhelmed, and he was the perfect guy to come in and help me, right? But so anyway, I asked Alvino that story, and he said, my oldest son got recruited for Vietnam, drafted, had to go to Vietnam. And he said to me, he said, "Dad, if I make it back alive from Vietnam," because people were getting sent back in body bags left and right. Yeah. He said, "If I make it back from Vietnam alive, promise me one thing." And Alvino said, "What's that?" And he goes, "Promise me you'll quit drinking." And so he went, deal. Well, his son got killed in Vietnam.
Jesus Christ.
And he told me that. And he went, at the moment he found out that he got killed, he kept his promise and didn't drink anymore, and then donated, or basically completely dedicated his life to helping kids. And that's like, that's a
heavy story.
That's a cool fucking story, though. Yeah, of a guy who dedicated his life to thousands of kids. Like, you know how many kids he's helped? Guys that I know now that have families and all that sort of stuff, who have led very successful lives because of that boxing gym, because of the work ethic and him being the father figure and chewing their asses and stuff like that. I mean, he was an amazing guy.
I mean, that also goes back to what we were talking about at that meeting, about how sports, whether or not you're going to become a professional athlete or anything, can build character. Yeah. Can, drive you to certain goals, that other people that you wouldn't normally associate with, in your social life or your work life, can have a impact that, is insurmountable, right? That can really change your world, change your outlook.
And it makes you with an alpha mindset, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it makes you think that, hey, not only can I achieve these goals, but I can help other people like this person helped me.
Yeah.
Right?
And then that transitions into life in general, business, the way you interact, everything, confidence, right? Mm-hmm. You know, it's like an attorney told me one time who wrestled his entire life. He goes, you know, just walking in and having a court case, and I look across at the opposing attorney team, and subconsciously I know I can physically just grab them and beat the fuck out of them. He goes, you wouldn't believe how much of a mental edge that gives you just because I wrestled my entire life, because I know I have better work ethic than them, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I'm going to do the research to win this case. That's that mentality it gives you. And we were talking earlier about the you know, no matter how you feel about it, Colin Kaepernick kneeling, right? That started all this stuff off. You know, not to mention who his girlfriend was, who she was associated with. You know, there's a lot of Marxist leanings behind that. What's going on, right? Again, whether neither here nor there, I don't kneel for the fucking anthem. I don't.
Yeah.
But then you see in the NFL, the Black Lives Matter, the NBA, Black Lives Matter. No matter how you feel about any of this, what it does is it causes division. Okay? And the division has detrimental effects to, and this is my theory, and I think it's pretty well founded. We're seeing it in massive, you know, identity crises amongst citizens, right? That if we can destroy, I have to think like, because of all my years game planning for fights that I would have, I had to think like the enemy. So when I ask fighters questions like, what do you think, honestly, the guy that you're fighting, what are his coaches telling him to exploit on you? What are your weaknesses? Where are you weakest? And they're like, well, I never thought of it like that. We always thought about what we were going to do. Mm-hmm. Or they didn't have a game plan at all. They're just going to go out and
in there,
fight,
yeah.
right? Never look at their tendencies. But so I started to think like the opposition, and that transitions into political opposition. Like, I'm the furthest from a Marxist anyone could be, and you are too, right? We just want to be ourselves and do what the fuck we want if we're not hurting other people, right? And I want everybody else to be able to do the same. So what better way to destroy a society than to destroy symbols like the NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball, symbols of alpha lifestyle and masculinity and strength and independence, than to completely destroy these leagues, because I can't fathom how much money they have bled out of the NFL, the NBA, you know, because think of the fan base that no longer will even watch.
I mean, just look at, not only the fan base, but with this whole thing, the gates, right?
Nobody going to games.
Nobody going to games. I mean, that's one of the reasons I was happy it was at Tampa Bay.
And you know what's amazing? Is, you know, the WNBA hasn't suffered at all because they have the same attendance.
I knew that was... Well, the thing is, it's so interesting because
I shouldn't say that, but it's the truth.
I mean, they tried to push that.
They needed more money and...
Well, pretty hard for the last 20 years. I remember, you know, it was right around that time I was in high school, at the end of high school, 20 plus, maybe 25 years, right?
Yeah.
And at the same time, the big push was soccer, too, internationally.
Right.
Never really caught on in the United States. There's still some diehards. It's there with the youth a lot more than it was ASO soccer leagues and that sort of thing. But I'd say the only thing that's been able to be popularized and pushed women-wise is the masculine sport of MMA. You know, people know who Cyborg is. You know, people,
Ronda Rousey, all that.
They know these people. I mean,
and those girls can fucking fight.
Yes, they can. Yes,
I mean, those are just Barb Honchak, who trained underneath me, Spencer Fisher's wife, a ton of other women. Give you a perfect example. Women can fucking fight. Like, they can fight.
Yeah.
And so this real slender girl from Pena's boxing gym used to come over and spar with my lighter guys to get extra sparring in, right? So she's sparring with a guy who's got really good kickboxing skills, not great on the ground, but real good kickboxing skills, but a lighter guy for her to spar with. And he's horsing around, right? And I go, listen, dude. Between rounds, I just walk over to him and I go, you better quit fucking around, because that girl will put you on your ass. And he laughs. He's like, okay, yeah, whatever, Pat. The next round, she cracks him with like a 6-punch combo and drops him on his face.
Oh, man.
And he was being paid to fight.
Yeah.
He was a professional fighter. I can't say he was world class, but she put his ass on the ground. And she was, 125 pounds, maybe, right? Mm-hmm. And Barb Honchak, grappling with her, or Emily Fisher on the ground, they're 125 pounds. But if I wasn't 70 pounds heavier, right, weighing 195, mm-hmm. in super good shape, and know what's going on the ground, they would choke me unconscious and break my arm.
Yeah, exactly. They tear your arm right off.
It was like you could never just stop them from moving underneath you. Mm-hmm. They were that good, right? That mobile. And Emily Fisher, at a party in North Carolina, they were doing a party at a kegger at a lake, right, where they're from. They went back to visit. And Spencer's there, and there was a bunch of their friends, and some drunk guys showed up who were not part of the friend group and started harassing the women at the party, right? And so Spencer walks up to this hillbilly from North Carolina and goes, listen, dude, you better leave and quit harassing our ladies, or I'm going to have my wife beat the shit out of you. And the guy's drunk and whatever, and he's like, yeah, right, And he goes, no, I'm serious. Like, I'm going to have my wife beat your ass. And the guy goes, all right, then, let's do this. Let's do it. Let's go. He's fucking spitting in his hands, right?
Oh, my God.
It's rural North Carolina. So anyway, Spencer goes, Emily, kick this guy's ass. And Emily's like, all right, let's get this done, man. Let's do it. So she ends up on the ground with the guy, takes him down, and breaks his arm with an arm lock, breaks his elbow, dislocates his elbow, and then, to add insult to injury, chokes him unconscious.
Oh, man.
Like, choke.
So what do you do? Put a Kimura key lock, break it that way, and then just take his back?
I think she just armbarred him, and then just, from there, proceeded to choke him however she choked him out. So anyway, they leave him laying in the grass, because they moved away from the party to do the fight. Mm-hmm. So they left him laying in the grass.
Oh, my God.
And like 30 minutes later, the guy's still laying on his back in the grass. And they think, oh, shit, he might be dead, right? He might not have woke up from that choke. We better go check on him. And they go over and they look down at him, and he's laying there with his eyes open. And they're like, are you okay? And he looks up at Emily, and he points at her, and he goes, you're good. With his good arm, of course.
Yeah, with his good arm. Yeah. I was going to say, yeah.
So my point is that women can fight their asses off.
Yeah.
Women, yeah, they can. And that's the thing is, it's interesting about women, when they first especially start shooting guns, they get good really fast, because guys tend to muscle a gun, especially pistols. Mm-hmm. It's like, they're like a caveman with it, where women listen, pay attention to technique, more with their brain, more finesse. And
they Shevchenko it, Valentina.
Mm-hmm.
No, she's scary. I've seen some of her stuff, man. Oh, my goodness.
But so, that's the thing is, not knocking women at all, because they can fight their asses off. There's a lot of women I'd have in a street fight with me.
You point them out, Pat, because I'm not looking to fight anybody. I don't even have a good leg kick to keep the distance, my friend. I got to learn something. Mr. Militich, we've been doing it for almost 2 hours.
Really? What time is it?
It's 11 o'clock, believe it or not.
Holy shit.
I know,
wow.
right? I know we went to that meeting at 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to tell the audience? We didn't really plug anything, but I do want to tell people theconspiracyfarm.com is the website, but your channel now has been rebranded to That Podcast Network. That's where they can find everything Conspiracy
on
Farm.
Rockfin, yeah.
Yep. And it's been a couple months. When are you, you and Wilson? Listen, I'm going to make you guys do one in March if you haven't done one by then.
No, we need to. We need to get back in the saddle. Shit, man. After that fiasco bullshit story that went out about me and all that sort of stuff, I just went, and Jeff was like, we're just going to lay low for a little while. But, we'll rev it back up.
You had John Tobacco on? I didn't realize that.
Yeah, Johnny Tobacco.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
And he's on Newsmax too now, isn't he?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, I think I've seen him there, because obviously I've seen him defending Max Pub and everything else. And another big case. Guys, I don't know what else to tell you other than all the links are down below for you to support.
Oh, yeah, and if they want the product that adds 45% more oxygen at a cellular level and clean your cells out of toxins, it's totally organic, plant-based. I've never seen anything like it. You can go to blackoxygenorganics.com/PJ Miletich.
Miletich.
Yes, sir.
Miletich. Every spell. And by the way, so I've been taking that, right?
Yeah.
So let's talk about it a little bit, because I talked about it a little bit with Nick Spahn. Pat gave me a bag of it. For the first week, I was doing the 1 scoop. Yeah. Right? So I did 1 scoop the first week. Second week, I started doing the 2 scoops, and I'll be honest, I was having trouble sleeping. Now,
because it's not caffeine. There's no caffeine. What it does is it goes into your cells. It's nano in size. So it can go into the cells. It delivers nutrients and oxygen to your cells in really high doses, like we used to get from our food before the soil was completely depleted of minerals from mass farming, right?
Yeah.
So it's made from friggin' really nutrient-rich bog mud up in Canada. Mm-hmm. It's the most nutrient-rich bog he could find in testing, right? And he tested hundreds of bogs. So it's super rich in nutrients. And so you put it into your body, it's nano in size, so it can travel into the cells, deliver the nutrients and the oxygen at really friggin' high levels, which when you have that oxygen-rich environment with nutrients, it activates the mitochondria within the cell, which is the furnace of the cell, which thereby creates energy. So if you take it too late in the day, your mitochondria are friggin' going, hey, we're fucking working, we're having fun, man.
The other thing is, it's not like a speedy high. It's just like, I don't want to go to bed.
You're awake.
Yeah, I'm awake.
You're just awake. I'm not tired at all after talking for 2 hours with you and 2 hours with the other group at the meeting before this, right?
Yeah.
I have no fatigue at all. But you have to take it like first thing in the morning and 1 or 2 in the afternoon.
Yeah, you don't want to go past that.
No, but because of that, if you time it right, you'll sleep like a baby.
Yeah.
So that's the important thing of it. But people are crushing their PRs in endurance stuff, running, swimming. Like my daughter is kicking ass in swimming right now. Mm-hmm. It's healing people up. I can't say it treats, cures, or prevents anything. But if you put the right nutrients into the body, people with diabetes, it lowers your blood sugar. It just does. You just have the right nutrients in your body. People with COPD, asthma, that's from inflammation in the respiratory system. Mm-hmm. It reduces inflammation in the body. All of a sudden, the guy with COPD, in some cases where we've had people with oxygen who can't walk around the house very much because they can't fucking move because of no oxygen, get rid of their oxygen tanks and they're out mowing the yard type shit, mm-hmm. Okay? People with rheumatoid arthritis, no longer testing positive for it in blood tests. It's hard to explain unless somebody gets on it and people go, oh, Miletich is like some lady goes on one of my posts about it goes, oh, you lost your job broadcasting, so now you've been reduced to selling snake oil. And I'm just like, what do you do with ignorance? I'm not going to roll around.
Yeah, and it's not like you haven't been talking about this stuff first time I met you. And again, I'm not saying it's done anything for me other than the fact that I can feel that I need to pull back. and I've been taking one every day this week. I'm going to try to get on a schedule where I do, but I've also got to start working out. I'm a big fat pig, and
it'll give you the energy to work out.
Exactly.
One guy that the guy goes, all right, I'm going to try this out. I'm going to buy a bag. My dad is really sick. He's 70 years old. He's really sick. He hasn't been to the gym in a decade. His body hurts. All this other shit. Like 3 weeks later, he calls me and goes, dude. Like my dad goes to the gym every morning at 6 a.m. and goes all day long and isn't in pain anymore. Like his joints don't hurt anymore and shit like that. And you go, because the right shit's getting put in his body. Finally, you can't go to a grocery store or GNC and buy inorganic sources of minerals and expect that your body, which is an organic organism, to absorb inorganic shit. Mm-hmm. Right? That's one of the fallacies of the supplement companies that here's a multivitamin. I'm not going to say a brand, but here's a multivitamin. You need vitamins. You need minerals. You have to have them. Well, yeah, we do. From an organic source, mm-hmm. not from an inorganic source.
Well, it's pretty much out there. Again, I'm not a doctor, but everybody talks about absorption rates on everything.
Doctors don't know shit about this stuff.
Yeah.
right?
Well, I haven't heard
very
talk
few.
About, fulvic acid or anything like that.
Right.
But the absorption rate is almost never in dispute, right? Like, they're always saying that you're never going to get 100% absorption rate from any type of a synthetic.
Take black oxygen once and see how. Take it for a month and see what happens.
I take it with my vitamins, too. I kick back the vitamins.
You don't need those.
I'm just saying.
You don't need the vitamins. You don't fucking need them. I
want to show you the stack of vitamins I have in the other room.
Just take black... Dude, I take black oxygen twice a day. I take my greens 85 twice a day. Uh-huh. I take a liquid turmeric sublingual, which is 100 times more powerful than taking a turmeric pill, right? And then I take one other product from AIC Medicine here in town, from Sean Snyder.
Okay.
And those are the only 4 things I take.
Okay.
That's it.
Well, you heard it from Pat Miletich, folks. Again, you can follow us over on YouTube, youtube.com/thatpodcastnetwork or InfoWarrior. The links are down below. We're doing
UFC.
UFC Saturday night. So we're going to do some of the prelims here, depending on what Pat gets here. Nick's going to come in. We're going to get a third microphone.
That'll be great. Nick and I and you, we'll have a blast.
Good. And he was really good.
He's
as
bright.
a broadcaster. He's a smart guy.
Yeah.
And he's a wrestling coach. So we get a lot of really good insight while we were watching that, too.
Yeah.
So get ready for that Saturday. I love you
Best
guys.
Broadcasting trio in the business.
The best.
Why listen to the UFC?
What's that?
Just watch the UFC, turn the volume off, and listen to us.
Let's see if we can bring Fitch in and you get Chevello. Although Chevello's probably calling the 1FC. They are back in business over there.
Yes.
All right, guys. We'll see y'all later.